session on our YouTube channel later. So if you want to have a look back or share this with other people, you're free to. There's a playlist of all the previous meetups that we've had since last year when I started recording them. All right, so let's have a look at what the toolkit is first, right? It's a book, it's over 300 pages, and it contains more than 99 creative exercises and training formats. And with creative exercises, I mean anything varying from like introductory formats to closers to energizers, all that's targeted at an agile context, right? Not physical exercises, no, sort of like these facilitation techniques that you use in an office with a team, with groups of teams, with management. And they're all coming from our own experience, right? We're not all like the original authors of each and one of these exercises, right? Some of them, we don't even know where they're coming from, right? We sort of started doing them. Others are pretty well known. The 5 dysfunctions of a team is in there. Obviously, that's based on a book by Patrick Lencioni. And some of the ones, and I'm not sharing that one right now today, but are really the ones that we came up with ourselves, like the man or woman with a plan, where we look at individual goals and sort of craft that into team goals. So that sort of led up to this. And we have been using all these exercises at our clients for a long time, even within our own company. And it felt like it was time to sort of like get them all together. And we really wanted to make it into your reference guide and a cookbook, so you could always fall back on it and have a look and be like, hey, I'm looking for like a training format, or I'm looking for a facilitation technique for this meeting. So you could grab the book and sort of go there, and it would not only like tell you what the exercise is, but how to run it, what to keep into mind, what are like tips, what are things that you can focus on, what are variations to some of these exercises, all to make them more valuable. And like I said, it's targeted at Agile coaches and Scrum masters, but basically any sort of team context you can use this in. If you're a manager or a team lead or any sort of facilitator, really, even a team member, you can use this, but there's a clear targeted audience, as you can see from the title. And that's primarily who we wrote this for. So I already explained a little bit why we started doing this, right? But it's not just that it's not just that we saw that need, right? But it's also that sometimes you explain an exercise to someone, or you run it once, or you see it happening somewhere, and you're like, yeah, that's cool, and I can run it myself. But then when you want to run it yourself, it turns out it's not that simple. So we wanted to write it down in a way that you can always go back and get like the full plan for that exercise. How do you actually run it? The book is written with you as a facilitator in mind, not like, hey, this is the exercise, this is what the results should be. No, these are the steps you have to take. This is what you have to take into account. These are suggested time boxes. So it's pretty detailed in that aspect. I'm seeing a question that I want to like hook in on. Most are remote friendly, right? I don't think there's anyone in this, well, maybe one or two, but most of the ones in the book you can also do when you're remote. Some require some adaptation, but I do want to say that some of them are simply more valuable in person. And I guess they're mostly around the ones where you're really working on team building, getting to know people, right? I'm going to be sharing one later about a team canvas. That's one of those things where it's simply a lot simpler and easier and authentic and deeper when you're meeting in person, right? So they're definitely remote friendly. Back to the why it was actually written, right? So again, you run lots of exercises if you're a facilitator or an Agile coach or a Scrum master. So you could have those exercises that you're not using that frequently, or you're simply forgetting because like new ones pop up, or you're doing them more regularly than others. You sort of tend to forget some of the other ones, especially the ones that are not that frequently used and or are only suitable for like a certain phase of the team, right? Like team startup exercises. Like you don't do those every day. So that was really pivotal to put those in there as well, because every now and then Especially if you're a contractor, you're going to end up in a new client. You might have to start teams over again, or have to hit the ground running. Like, we want to make sure to capture some of those things that are valuable for those situations as well. And those exercises that, again, you don't run that frequently, but are still like an incredibly valuable asset in your toolkit, basically. And we're working on this. I was constantly reminded, like, oh yeah, right, that's another one of those exercises. I haven't read that in a while, but I can use that for team X, Y, and Z. So again, those are some of the reasons why we did it. And we wanted it to be a single resource, right? We wanted everything to be in a single place so it was easy to go back to. Before this, even internally at our company, we used to have a SharePoint site where we sort of uploaded all these exercises, but it was never complete. It wasn't consistent. It was hard to keep up with them, right? So, and I noticed that this at some of our clients as well. They have communities of practice around Agile, and they start building a database and then sort of like goes away, and that's one of the problems that we wanted to solve, right? So that go-to guide that was needed, including guidance, and mostly to help you out quickly, right? Be like, oh, right, I got a session later today or tomorrow. I need like a facilitation technique or an exercise. We wanted you to have a place to go to, so like grab and say, like, hey, let's have a look and what should we do? I'm going to pause here briefly, see if there's any questions. I forgot to mention this during the introduction, but you're free to speak up to ask questions or leave them in chat. Jamie is asking an excellent question. What are like the plans to keep this current? A blog, membership, community? I'd say blogs are the primary focus, but ultimately there will be a second edition of this book, right? With feedback, insights. There's a lot of pages in here, so I can't promise there's not like a single thing that maybe doesn't make sense to everyone, or doesn't really come across well, or some exercises just like no longer make sense, or new ones pop up. So yes, we do plan on ultimately coming up with a new version, but that wouldn't be over the course of the next few months. That will take a little bit longer. So the blog post is what we all do in order to keep engaged with people. So yeah, that's definitely the plans. Great question. Yep. Okay, so I already mentioned this like just now, that we want this to be a go-to, right? And that's why we have started the book. Basically, it's on the second or the third page, a decision tree, right? You got your table of contents and everything, your reading guide, but there's also a decision tree in here. These are the categories. This is decision tree. That decision tree was put in place especially for those that are in a hurry or where you have no clue what to do, right? So it looks at group size, energizes an existing team. Do you want to get to know each other? What kind of target audience do you have? It sort of helps guide you to certain exercises that might be suitable to you. In addition to that, we have rated exercises. So with a 1 to 3 star system, like 1 star means it's a simple exercise. You can just get started. This is also suitable for any sort of team. But if it's like 3 stars, it's more complicated to do, or it requires something else from your team. It requires your team to be a little bit more mature, or you or your organization. So we wanted to make it really easy to get started, and if you don't know, to sort of like dive straight into this, right? And then other than that, it's just training exercises and exercises and training formats, including examples for different purposes, as I said before. So starting a new team, getting to know each other, to energize it, achieving business objectives, working with management, helping your product owner, you name it, just general facilitation. How do you close a meeting properly, right? Instead of saying, well, take care, have a good day, talk to you later. And like creative ways to deal with that. And even how to do some of this stuff remotely, right? Because that's the reality that we sort of live in right now, is that 2 years ago, most things used to be in person. there was a sudden, obviously, shift to remote because of COVID. And what I've noticed over the past 6 months is sort of like companies just sort of do want to get you back to the office, but there's a lot of pushback, obviously, to that because we suddenly had to work remote. Now we suddenly have to like go back to the office again. And lots of people have moved around, gotten bigger homes because, well, their studio apartment wasn't suitable anymore for working remotely, right? So they moved further out, and so their commute's going to be longer, or impossible. So remote's what we're going to be living with. And so that's why we also like spend some time in that book on making sure that you can do things remotely and what are things you have to be very mindful of. Kristen's also mentioned something about remote working. I agree, team building is easiest in person. Many of my recent teams are hybrid, including nearshore and offshore. Yeah, there are definitely tips and tricks to convert them into virtual exercises, right? Not for all of them. For some of them, it's sort of a given, right? How you run them virtually. For others, it's been made explicit in like the tips and tricks section, what you can do to make them more effective if you're going to be doing them virtual. Again, the thing with virtual team building and virtual facilitation, in my experience, is that it requires a lot more preparation. For a lot of these exercises, what you need is either whiteboards, brown paper on the wall, markers, Post-its, right? And you can quickly draw something up as you go along. If you do virtual facilitation, what you'll notice, you need to prepare maybe breakout sessions, you need to sort of set up the template a little bit. It's really difficult to do that as you go along. And yeah, I'd say that's the bigger difference, I'd say. So if you're doing all of these virtual, then yeah, go for it. Use a tool like Miro, Mural, or anything else that works for you. But spend some more time on preparing these. Believe me, and I guess a number of people here can relate to this. If you just like run into one of these meetings and you haven't prepared them virtually, then yeah, you're going to be playing catch up, or you're not going to get the most value out of those meetings, right? And Jamie loves Miro. I do too. Same with Mural. Apples and oranges, I guess, but yeah, they're fantastic. They make life a lot better. I did API planning this morning, actually, using, they used to use Word documents for some reason virtually. Now we switched to Mural, and it's like 10 times easier. All right. I don't see any questions, so I want to move ahead and just go over like some examples. What can you expect here? By the way, I'm going to be sharing these slides and a promo version of the book after the meetup. I'm going to be posting it tomorrow, including the video. That promo version contains 10 of the exercises that are actually in the book, including the ones that I'm showing you here today. So I'm just going to talk you through them, see if there's any questions, just to give you a taste of what it's like. And then tomorrow you're going to be getting that free copy. It's also on my LinkedIn, so you can go there and download it and see if it's something you like. And if you do, well, you're free to buy the book or ask a very interesting question later on and get that one free copy I'm going to be handing out. Team Canvas. And this is one where I said it happens more naturally in person. You can actually do this virtually very, very well, but you have to prepare it. You have to make sure that people understand that it's more explicitly clear what you have to do, right? And this exercise is all about team building. It's finding a purpose for the team, sort of looking at your strengths and weaknesses, looking at goals that people might have, their values, their expectations. It's sort of like crafting that into those common goals, that team purpose, right? If you do this in person, you're going to need about 3 hours of time. I guess you could do it in 2 as well, but I'd say this is sort of like a retrospective. The less time you actually spend on this, the less value you're going to get out of this. You need to iterate for this exercise. You need to spend time thinking about this. So yeah, take a chunk of time. Like 3 hours would be good. 4 hours would be better. 2 hours, yeah, it can work, but you might need some time later on to add on to this. You want to do this exercise in a private space, no interruptions, we're going to be looking at people's purposes and their skills. And you don't want like your senior manager to sit in there. So look at everyone like filling out skill matrix or personal goals. You want to make sure if you disclose this to the outside, which I highly encourage, to make sure that you keep the conversations private and be very mindful about what you ultimately disclose. And then real or virtual whiteboard, markers, stuff like that. And Jamie just shared the mural template for this in chat. So if you're using Mural, you can just like click that link and use the template and get started. And the key to this exercise, other than like flowing through it, is really keep iterating, right? So you're going to be starting by mapping out the people in the roles who are on the team, right? You're going to be looking at some of the activities that you want to be doing as a team. Once you have that sort of mapped out, you want to be looking at people's personal goals, about their needs and expectations, about their values, right? And so like craft that into common goals and then ultimately a purpose. And once you get to know each other a little bit better, you can look at those strengths and assets and those weaknesses and risks that are in the team. All of this help you understand each other better within a team setting and make sure that you can work more effectively. And again, that purpose. So why are we together? For teams, it is incredibly important to have a purpose and understand, why are we a group? What are we doing this for? If you don't know why you're doing it, why you're a team, you're just going to be plowing through work and then be done with it, right? And like I said, keep iterating. So take like 5 minutes for personal goals. You can even do like little breakout groups where 2 people talk about those goals and then get back together and sort of like go over it step by step. This is not a one go 3-hour exercise. No, it's like split into 5, 10, 50-minute time boxes until you ultimately get to a team canvas. And once you're done, you want to make sure you end up with a set of agreements, like how are we going to follow up on this? Where are we going to post this? What are team agreements we might want to make? Again, there's another exercise completely for that and on how you come up with team agreements, also in the book. But you want to make some agreements in there to follow up and maybe reflect on this further down the road. I'm going to pause there, see if there's any questions before I move on to example 2 out of 3. Don't see any questions pop up, so allow me to move on. Another exercise, and this is great if you work across. Oh, there is a question actually. So let me just read that out before I dive into this. So how would one go about implementing these for projects that are already underway, possibly behind schedule, managing 1 or 3 remote teams at the same time for the same project? Company A and B work together. They provide services for C. The Agilist is the lead point of contact for all the parties in the project. I'm sort of assuming, Valon, that that's going to be that's going to be you want to team build with those teams, right? You want to see how you can run this exercise with those teams. Gonna give you a second to respond there, and otherwise I'm gonna move on with my assumption here. Not seeing a response straight away. So yes, you can do this with existing teams as well. This is not necessarily for new teams. You can do this with any team at any time, right? I'd say your definition of a team sort of ties into this, right? Because I'd say if they work for company A, company B, and they provide services for company C, 1 to 3 teams, if they're all like teams of 7 to 9 people, I'd say run this with each of those teams, right? And then share it across those teams to see what they're worth. Then alternatively, if they're like smaller teams, you got like 2 people here, 3 people there, I'd say you can run this across. This is not a super effective exercise to run with 27 people, for example. It's going to take a long, long time. You're not going to get to that single purpose. There's a reason why there's a recommended team size in most Agile frameworks, right? Between like 3 and 9 people. And because like beyond that, it just becomes hard to coordinate and understand. So also when you're doing safe, I do this on a team level, never on a program level, right? So that's the one thing I would say. Hope that's helpful. If not, feel free to get back later. Moving on to the transformation canvas. Like I said, this is helpful across teams, right? For like a more higher level strategic effort. And it really looks at how is our agile transformation doing, or maybe better put, how are we continuously transforming and what do we want to keep focusing on? Agile transformations are not a start-stop kind of thing. It's not like we start now, 2 years later, we're done. You're never truly done transforming. And that's what I like about this format. You can always keep using it and keep updating it, right? So it just sort of display the state of the transformation as it is right now. So like, what are we focusing on? What are we not focusing on? What are risks that we're facing? What are our stakeholders? Who's part of the team? Like spearheading or guiding this transformation? What are some of the conditions that we're facing? How are we measuring it? And what is that goal that we're working towards? And this is to what I said before, like that goal that can change at one point, right? You reflect on this regularly, and then you can set a new goal, new metrics, change your scope, and sort of keep moving on and continuously transforming. So you typically set this up with a transformation team or a group of agile coaches, and stakeholders, right? You should involve them in this because those are the people you are technically transforming this for. And I guess you could argue you're doing it ultimately for your customers and for the wider organization. But yeah, you want to and obviously engage with those stakeholders that are important, especially people like sponsors. So again, about 2 hours, I'd say, for this for a first go. The more time you spend on this, the bigger your plan is going to be. And with the team canvas, it was more like, yeah, you get to know each other better. If you spend some more time on this, you can go deeper. With this, you're going to get a bigger plan that's not going to be helpful. So for this, it's really key to stick within the time box and make sure you're not spending more time on it. And if you feel like you're not really there yet, again, you hit that time box, you can get back to it a week or 2 weeks later, right? Private space, I'd say, not private as in you have to be hidden somewhere, but you want to make sure you can do this calmly and quietly and not near the coffee machine. And then again, if you're virtual, that's not that big an issue. You need your average things like whiteboard markers, stuff like that, or what is it, Miro. I'm pretty sure there's a template for this too, and otherwise it's fairly easy to make one based on this here. And the key for this is to sort of keep iterating, right? You want to talk about your goal first. What is it that we want to achieve, and how do we measure that? So where do we want to go, and how are we going to measure our progress or whether we're there? Then you want to look at, so what do we explicitly consider to be in scope and out scope for this effort, right? It could be that there's stuff that ultimately needs to be addressed, and you want to be explicit about whether you are going to do that right now or not. It makes your life a lot easier if you are transparent about that, because people simply know, like, hey, it is on your radar, but we're just not going to be looking at it right now. That's something for later. And this is the stuff that we are focusing on right now. And it helps with a transformation team too, to be sure, like, hey, yeah, this is what we should be focusing on and nothing else. Then obviously the risks that you foresee, again, not the endless risk list of what could possibly ever go wrong, like actual risk that you foreseeing right now. We might not get this one director on board, for example, right? Or there's very little agile knowledge. We do not have budget for any training right now. So that could leave like a big hole in the transformation that we're going to have to fix later. Stakeholders, just mapping it out, who are the most important stakeholders, the transformation team too, the business conditions that we're facing, other conditions that we have to take into account. Again, if you sort of quickly iterate over that, I spent like 10 to 15 minutes on all of those, you should be hitting about those 2 hours, and then you're done with your first version. And you keep reflecting on this, like every week, every 2 weeks, you get back to this, you check where are we right now, what are the next steps we can take. Again, there's more additional like formats that build on this in the book, where it's more like a transformation backlog board that can tie into this. And in addition to that, you want to make sure that this is transparent, right? So that everyone can see it. Transformation should not be a secret. Transformation team should not be hidden. The goal should be transparent. This is not just a tool for you. This is a living artifact, a transparent artifact for the rest of the organization, so they know what's going on as well. Again, pausing briefly here, see if there's any questions. Feel free to speak up or type them in chat. I see a question here that I am going to say for the Q&A. Uche, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm just going to put a pin in it. Got one more example to go over before we go to Q&A, and then I'll definitely get to that question. And I might have to look in the book because I don't remember all 99 of them, right? So I'm gonna have to look at which one is my favorite. Okay, I don't see any questions about this specific exercise. I'm going to go on to the next one and then open up for questions and answers. Right, the last one, and this is actually that I love myself. I use this in every professional Scrum product owner class that I teach because it's such a powerful format, and way too few product owners actually do this. It's called stakeholder mapping. It's based on the stakeholder engagement analysis and interest map by Roman Pichler. He's sort of a product owner expert, and it sort of like maps out the amount of power that stakeholders have against their interest, right? Takes an hour at most to do this, and you can like frequently get back to it. And I know I say this a lot, frequently get back to it. I don't mean to spend an hour on all of these things every week, but for this is like, well, just a check-in every week, a reminder in your to-do list or calendar, like, hey, look at that canvas for a second. Like, is your stakeholder map up to date? Yep. All right, let's move on and do your job, right? And this creates a valuable insight into your stakeholder landscape, because until you do this exercise, or if you have no stakeholder map at all, it's just going to be living in your head. And there's a lot of hidden assumptions in there, right? And one of those hidden assumptions are sometimes that people that think they are important, or departments that think they're important, or whatever, might not actually be as important to your product as you thought they would be. And so by mapping that out, you're going to get all those interesting insights. So low power, low interest, you want to monitor, sort of inform those people, right? Those are typically the majority of your users. They have no real say, and they have to use it, or they use it, and your product disappears. You're probably going to like shrug and like move on to the next thing, right? You got those with high power and low interest that you want to keep satisfied, right? So that's like governance, those kind of departments. You want to make sure that you adhere to all the rules and regulations, legal, right? They can shut you down, but they don't really care about your product. So yeah, you sort of have to talk to them and take them seriously, because they have a large amount of power. Then there is also those that have a high interest but low power. Those are your power users, or very vocal users, or those that like have like a big following. And you want to engage them much more regularly, right? So proactively inform them. And then there's those with high power and high interest, right? And yeah, that could include like the executives in your organization, or your key customers. And those are the people that you really want to collaborate with, right? And it could be that like an executive or a VP or even a CEO has low interest in your product, but it just brings in a ton of money, and and then they move on to low interest but high power. So you just got to keep them satisfied, right? So it's really all about figuring out like where are these people. Like you can even have like gradual, like closer to the line, like hey, these are in between low interest and high interest, or high power, low power. So like mapped it all out. And this is one where tools like Mural and Miro are excellent. You can do this with post-it notes, but you're going to need a lot of space. I can tell you that to begin with, it just could change regularly. But you do want to share this with your stakeholders as well, right? So typically, if you're a facilitator, you do this with a product owner, or anybody, or a program manager, portfolio manager, people like that, even executives, and then maybe talk about it with some stakeholders after, spend about 1 hour about this, ask about some target groups, and then if you share it with stakeholders, you make agreements on how are we going to interact, right? So most of your users, you agree that you're just going to inform them. Those you have to keep satisfied, like what's a good rhythm, what's a good cadence for you to touch base and sort of see where we are at. Key players, you want to every sprint review, you want them to be there, right? You want to continuously engage with them. And those, like, you have to proactively inform. You could invite them at sprint reviews, or send them regular updates, right? So lots of things you can do. Extremely powerful format, and I'd say a must have for every product owner. Right, I'm going to pause there, see if there's any questions about this work format specifically, this exercise, before I move on to the Q&A and that excellent question that's already waiting there. Right, I don't see any questions pop up. So now is the time to ask any questions that you might have. And I am going to give away the book to what I consider to be the most creative, or whatever the best questions, totally subjective. In case you do need to drop, thank you very much for being here. Again, everything that I mentioned that I talked about today is going to be shared on the Meetup page tomorrow, including the recording, the slides, and the promo copy of the book. Next meetup is going to be March 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Right, Uche. Again, if I'm mispronouncing your name, you already said I was correct. Nice. So your question is, what's your favorite activity for teams that are more mature and not the most enthusiastic about retros? I would always ask, why are they not enthusiastic about retros anymore? Could be a variety of reasons. If people are not enthusiastic about retrospectives anymore, I'd always look at different retrospective formats, I'd say. But maybe you've tried all that and they're like, we know each other pretty well and we talk about things all the time. There's something in the book, and I just briefly looked at it, that's called the team dashboard. And the team dashboard has all kinds of variations to it, but its most basic form, it's one of those things where you keep track of how the team is doing, what they're focusing on. And you can really go deep if you have a mature team that knows each other well, that's probably high performing, right? And this is not where you like post your backlog and stuff like that. That's you could, but that's your trivial stuff. But also you want to post team agreements that we have with each other. You want to do like little happiness charts and how people are doing, how busy they are, what their personal goals are. So like combination of a team canvas and some of the other exercises combined, basically. We've been using those at ProAwareness for, ever since I know this, for at least 7 years, physically on whiteboards. I'm not sure how they're doing it right now at headquarters. I haven't been there for a while due to COVID. But they're back into the office. And we used to look at that every week. We all got together in the office, Agile coaches, even though we're consultants and at different clients. I got back into the office every week. First thing we would do was like a check-in around our team dashboard, right? And it's how we managed to like figure out how people are doing. How busy are you this week? Are you working on stuff that's interesting? Are you happy with your position with your customer? What is it, those goals that you're working on? Are you progressing toward them? What is stuff that we want to achieve as a team that's not necessarily directly related to the work that, for example, we do at clients, but like the innovation stuff that we want to focus on. I'd say if your team doesn't like retrospectives anymore, that could be one of those things that you can focus on to do, because we got a ton of value out of that, and they continue to be valuable. And those words are never static, right? They're always updated depending on the need. There was a time where we, as a sub team within the organization, had some issues with billability, right? We had people at clients with a bad rate compared to what we were paying them, so we needed to fix that. So we created something that sort of looked at our rates and our turnover and stuff like that to fix that problem, right? And once we had that fixed, we took it off. So it's really like that team space where I'd say only very experienced teams can collaborate around. If you don't have the relationship of trust, if you don't have that experience together, you're not going to be able to do those things in a transparent fashion that's actually going to be helpful to you. So I hope that answer helps. Anybody else have any questions?
I'll just ask out loud. It's too much to try to type, but can you hear me?
Yeah, but your volume is a little bit low, Jamie.
Okay, is this any better?
Yeah, I might just need to turn up my volume. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is, so this book has lots of great ideas, and I alluded to it in my earlier question in terms of having a place where we can add additions and things like that. But what would be kind of fun, have you thought about doing a community specifically for this book where we could share ideas, and you can even have sort of contests of like, oh, your activity won a place in my version 2 book, or something like that, and that a place where you can get feedback on the activities people have used in your book, plus people can bring up other activities or even modifications they've made to these activities specific to this book, kind of a fan club type thing. I think there'd be a lot of value in that.
I think that's a very interesting idea, and I've never, I have to admit, I never really thought about it for that long, but I think it's a fantastic idea actually to do that, because I guess it's also to what I said, right, about like it's never really static, and there's lots of different ways how you can run these exercises and different insights. So yeah, I might actually do it. I am going to write down the idea. And I'll give you credit in the first post.
That'd be awesome.
So do you have any thoughts about like a platform for that? Because I know there's collaboration tools like Slack and Discord and stuff like that. But I'm not sure what all the Toolkits are using these days. So
I think it's kind of like the difference between Miro and Mural. It's a tomato, but
yeah.
I personally like Discord better than Slack, and have had more success in the communities I belong to on Discord. I see more activity happening there than some of the Slack communities. Their app is better, for one thing, on your phone, which is where a lot of people are writing their responses at night while they're watching TV or something. That's when they have time to kind of catch up on community type things. But
fair enough,
so to be honest, that app is really important. But Discord works really well, and it'd be kind of fun to run like little contests, like you can come up with the best modification or the most unique activity, or just just a place where we could say, hey, we're going to vote on this activity for version 2 of the book, or something like that.
No, absolutely, yeah.
A kind of a toolbox that is live and not static and is growing and adapting to the world around us as it changes so quickly.
Yeah, I love the idea. I'm going to give it a little bit more thought, but I'm pretty sure ultimately this is going to happen, because we've been hearing lots of things about the book and that people like it, and I think this could be the next valuable thing. I got to post it here to sort of explore how feasible it is, but I think it might happen.
Awesome.
And if it happens, I'm going to be sharing it on the Meetup page. So excellent suggestion there. Great. There's some other questions here, and for some I might have some follow-up. So Kristen, you, what's your favorite and most effective way to break through an apathetic team? What is a challenge that you're specifically facing?
Oh, I have a team with very low psychological safety, and I've just recently joined them myself. And from what I've seen over about 3 sprints so far, there isn't engagement. It's difficult to get people to pay attention, let alone respond. And
Right.
Accountability has just fallen off. We're not meeting our commitments, and
Right.
nobody cares.
Okay, well, that's I am going to say that's a very easy question to answer, but it's harder to actually do it, right? So we do have about 6 actual getting to know you exercises, and there's there's like exercise in there that can go as deep as you want to, right? For example, there's the me map where you sort of like draw out yourself and then make lines for like work and private life and hobbies and sort of how your life was to have them like get to know each other better. And it allows for psychological safety in the sense that people can share as much as they want. Another one that's in there, and that's really, I had a team very similar to yours, a couple of people that were at that organization for over 30 years. They were heading towards their retirement, and really the most stubborn people that I've ever seen. And they were joined by a couple of people from India who had just like moved to the Netherlands and got there. And it was zero trust. And what I did was journey lines. So it's like where you have like a line, and everything over that line is positive and anything below that's negative. And they sort of like draw out the line of their lives, and then they highlight specific activities. And one of those stubborn people that never was open or communicative, he's the person crying in front of the group after like 45 minutes into this when he was explaining his journey line. And it completely changed the team dynamic after that, right? And I'm not trying to encourage you to make people cry, right? I'm just saying it's a very psychologically safe way exercise to help people to open up, right? Because they can share what they want. They can share as much as they want and how they want it, right? Without being forced to do it. And excuse me, that's different from some formats where you're sort of like forcing them to fill out a specific template, like the team canvas that I had just now. Mm-hmm. There's so much specific things to it. The other thing that we have in here is woman or man with a plan, where it looks at your personal, work, physical, emotional goals. Like that's a little too specific, I'd say, for those people, because why would they share their emotional goals, right? And exactly. That's sort of that would put them on the spot. So yeah, there's definitely ways to do it, and journalize. Again, you can buy the book, you can Google it, you can find it somewhere. In my experience, is a very safe way to sort of get them out there.
I'll check it out. Thank you.
Great question. A favorite thing about this book, the fact that there's so much in there, and I keep forgetting what's in there. That's really my favorite thing, because that means that whatever we set out to achieve has been achieved, right? It's supposed to be a reference guide, and it actually is, because you simply can't remember all of these, right? So, and then obviously that little decision tree and the categorization at the start that I'm secretly looking at right now in order to provide answers. I think that's fantastic, in a sense that it helps me get to where I want to be, right? We're asking something about having people getting to know each other better. You just look at it. So yeah, I hope that answered that question. Deborah, what is your favorite activity to increase psychological safety? Well, I guess I sort of just answered that, right? The journey lines are really my personal favorite, to sort of like try and break through the barrier. I guess the same with the Meetup, which you can keep that really superficial, like to your name, where you grew up, what college you attended, what was your major, what are your hobbies, who's your family. And you can go deeper to like, hey, I want to be financially independent by 50, or I had like an issue with my dad there. Really, those are things that you can either scratch the surface or go really deep, and you can do them several times without them becoming overly cumbersome. Especially the Meetup, you can update that or ask targeted questions to have people open up a little bit more. So yeah. I hope I'm answering all of these questions, but there's a couple more. So in case I don't, feel free to speak up or post it in chat. Next one from Yogi. How can a Scrum Master feel he is providing value to the team? It's a very good question. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm not sure if the book can answer those, but a Scrum Master servant leader, right? So the success of a servant leader is measured by the success of others. That doesn't mean a Scrum Master, you can just lean back and let the team do all the work and they're successful, you're successful. If we're only that simple, right? But then we wouldn't have Scrum Masters. I'd say as a Scrum Master, you always set out goals that you want the team to achieve, right? An increase in value delivery, maybe a reduction of cycle time, more transparency about things. And I'd say, as a Scrum Master, I'm working with a team right now, right? And then it doesn't matter, Agile Coach, Scrum Master, potato for the context of this, right? So one of my teams had an issue with cycle time. It was 30 days, means like on average. So from start to end, like we're picking it up to like, hey, we deliver value, 30 days, way too long for me, way too long, right? Not healthy considering the work they were doing. Web-based applications, React, Python, Django, all that kind of stuff should be quick, right? I know there's the typical corporate hurdles you have to jump through before you can put something live, but that happened after those 30 days. So that was an issue. So I set out to reduce that cycle time, and I did. Went back to 7 days. And not because I was so awesome, but because you have to work with the team in order to achieve that. So I'd say as a Scrum Master, that is definitely one of the things how you can measure you're successful. The team was successful, so you were successful. But you, as a Scrum Master, had a role to play in highlighting the fact that it was taking that long and helping them find new ways to manage through work, not overcommitting anymore, all these kind of things, right? So that's how you can be very effective as a Scrum Master and measure it. All right. Sure. I hope that was helpful. And we're saying, are there any specific activities in it for Agile transformation? Yeah, I'd say that's mostly focused around the management teams section in there. So like I said, the transformation canvas we had out there, you have the transformation roadmap. Let's see what else is in there. I guess in the context transformations called the Agile Leadership Selfie, where leaders reflect on themselves and also share back those results with the rest of the organization. In the context of transformations, I consider that to be an extremely powerful format because people follow their leaders, right? If leaders don't go first, if they're not vulnerable, if they're not changing, if they're not like transparent about not being perfect and wanting to change that, then how are other people supposed to change, right? And I've met leaders that were super aware of a word I can't say, what kind of people they are, right? But they were so comfortable with it that they didn't want to change it. So they were like, yeah, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect either. So yeah, this is how I'm not perfect. Now you go change, right? It doesn't work that way. So that's why I say that's leaders go first. I think that's incredibly helpful. Yeah. Kristen, hardest part of getting pen to paper and writing this book? Oh, time. I'm working on another one right now with a coworker, and again, it's time. Like just you got to start doing it, and you got to work at the time. You got to put it on your calendar. I'd say that's really how you get it done. I guess that goes for most things. Yeah. Another question here from Jamie: how do you encourage engagement in the activities? Oh, for me, I have some teams that love these sorts of things, and other teams that just hate them. And advice for bringing naysayers into the fold. Yeah, start small. If your team doesn't like these exercises, you try to sneak like part of it into one of your regular meetings. I had one of these teams over the past year where, yeah, they didn't want to spend time for team building. It was hard to find time to begin with. And if they were there, they were just like, yeah, just hanging back, cameras off, just audio, not participating. And what we started doing, like, we had product backlog refinements for them, and we sort of sneaked it in like the first 10-15 minutes. So like, well, we're going to spend that on team building, just like quick energizer, just getting to know each other better. What's your favorite food, right? All the stupid stuff, I'd say. It's super interesting, but like it helps you get to know each other, but it's very simple, right? And first time was, yeah, everybody ate tacos. All right, let's move on. Until it took up half of our refinement, and it sort of like got them out of that hole that they were in. And yeah, I think that definitely helped them. So yeah, sometimes it feels like you're dragging on a dead horse. It's ridiculous. Yeah. What do you consider? What do I consider an interesting question? Yeah, again, it's completely arbitrary and subjective. But the book is for sale in case you really want a paperback copy. It's also on Kindle, so that could be a step up to see if it's worth spending that additional money on. If you got Kindle Unlimited, I think you can read it, and you can buy the paperback if you want to. So other specific exercises you find helpful for helping the team PO create a product vision? Yes, there's absolutely one about that called product vision. There's definitely one in there to help build that. And again, I'm sort of absolutely proving my point here that it's a cookbook because I can't remember all of these. That's why we wrote it down, right? And again, the template is a mural, but it has like a vision template, which is like a simplified version of, I'm not sure if you can see it, probably not, simplified version of the product. What is it? The business model canvas, where you sort of look at certain things that help you, like a target group needs, the product itself, and the business goals that help you get to the vision and where you want to go. So it's definitely in there, absolutely. SP is saying, although these are great exercises and important, oftentimes they take a long time and a lot of time. Yes, definitely. In addition, because of the time commitment, leadership is not so keen on them. How would you integrate these with their actual committed work they already do more easily? Let me start by saying, whenever leaders are that worried about spending 1 or 2 hours on team building, I know that the team camp is like a 3-hour exercise and it's sort of like out there, it's an outlier. But let's say some of the other things or journey lines, or you could take 1 hour for that. Really depends on the team size, right? Or you can split it up into pieces to 1 hour every week. But if they're that worried about time, it's a totally different conversation. It's not about, I wouldn't say your first direction would be, how do I like sneak this in? It would be, how do I explain to this person that by making a better team, they're getting more productive and they're going to be able to deliver more value? Because that's the real thing that's going on, right? There's some absence of trust there, right? They don't trust the team. They're all too worried about the team spending a couple of hours on something, right? So I want to address that as well. But yeah, and then the other direction, right? What I said before, like try to do it as part of your routine, right? Do it sprint planning. If you have your sprint planning session for a 2-week sprint, time box for that is, well, 8 hours, but typically less for shorter sprints. But let's say 4 hours, you could do like the first 30 minutes spent on team building and then do your sprint planning, or do part of these as retrospective. Definitely allowed to. You got 3 hours for that based on a 1 month sprint, typically shorter for shorter sprints. But yeah, you stretch your retrospective length for your refinement, nobody's going to notice, right? And you got lots of time to spend on this. I hope that helps. What's Kristen's asking? What's your elevator pitch for selling the time sink of fluffy feel good agile meetings? Oh, yeah, it's sort of like a little bit to the other.
Really, except what do you say to convince them?
Yeah. Yep. I asked a question. Why are you so worried about that? Why are you so worried on a team spending time on team building? Like, you could do it after work. You can all go out for a drink or do whatever, or agree to stay longer and spend time on this. But what are they so worried about on team building? Don't they go to corporate retreats or business dinners, right? What's the problem here? We're trying to become better, become a better team so we can deliver more value for this company and our customers. So it's not like you're carving out a day a week to spend on team building. You're just saying, do one of these a sprint, for example. One team building activity is sprint. Could be 30 minutes to an hour. It could be every once in a quarter. It's a little bit longer. So my elevator pitch is basically a question, and I know that might sound a little dumb, but there is a truth in there. That why are they so worried about that, right? We're not doing these exercises to make people feel good, right? We're not doing it to make them fluffy. There's solid formats that you can do that actually have tangible outcomes, like the team canvas I showed before. That's tangible, that's important, right? And you can share that with management too. So I'm not sure if that's a complete answer, but yeah, I'd say it's what I do. So SB, I'm not sure if I understand your question. You're saying, how would you talk to them, to those leaders? Oh, there's a conversation going on there. I can't read fast enough. Okay, I don't see a real. Let me put it like this: if I haven't answered it completely, feel free to post it in there so I can follow up on that. I do want to wrap it up in case people do have to leave. I can stick along for questions. So yes, I'm going to be sharing the Amazon link. Yes, I'm going to be sharing the sample of the book that I spoke about, and the slides and the recording for today. So all that's going to be there. I do need to give away the copy of the book, and I am going to be giving it to Jamie. Technically not even a question. But well, it came from a question, but for the suggestion of building a community, I think that's an excellent idea. I think it's definitely something I need to follow up on. I think it will be valuable for all of you and for us, obviously, because we love feedback. Love to make like a second version and improve version. So Jamie, we are connected on LinkedIn, right? Yeah, sure. You're welcome.
Yeah, we are. So yeah, if you want any outside eyes on it, let me know. I love doing stuff like that. So
good, and I'll make sure you get a free copy. I got them over here. All I need to do is we'll touch base on getting your address sorted on LinkedIn, or the address where you want me to ship it to. Doesn't really matter, and I'll get that over to you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
All right, I am going to stop the recording right here. Again, feel free